Okay, so we'll get started. Okay, so as I said at the beginning, today's the tough day in my sense, in my opinion, because we're taking up subjects that need to be taken up, that sometimes we avoid or discount or skirt around, and I always hope I do it in a very encouraging way. And because I mean to do it in a very encouraging way. And there's nothing that I'm telling you that I haven't been through 100 times over myself. I hope that in your lives I can be a little bit of what a scout is when people go out into unexplored territory, that there's somebody pointing out the dangers and the opportunities too, so that you're more aware as you go forward. And I think with the rope that I just talked about, it's a tough one for well-educated, ambitious, skilled, talented people. And I think we've all seen the consequences of this problem if we don't focus on it. Mike was saying to me that sometimes faithful people have an easier time with this message, because they know there's a bigger picture. They just need to be reminded again, like all of us, reminded again. Why do we go to church every single Sunday? It's because we've forgotten all of everything in a week. So we have to go again, we have to go again, we have to go again. And so that's what our lives is. It's just constant reminding. So this next one is tougher. I don't give it very often. Well, I haven't ever given it in this form before, so I wrote this one just for you all, but there's stories in it that I don't tell other people because they don't like them. So, so I figure I'm among family and friends. You can take it. So the name of this talk, it's more aimed at a really hard rope. I don't know exactly what to call it. A sense of control, willfulness, busyness, anger at the way life unfolds at us. You know, it's tough. The title of it, which you will shortly see, is called "Let Your Yes Mean Yes, and Your No Mean No." You know that from the Gospels, right? And that's a really important thing, because there's another quote in the book of Revelation where, through the author of Revelation, the Lord inspires him to say to the churches of Laodicea, "Your yes is lukewarm. I vomit you out." So, well, that's pretty harsh language. So let your yes mean yes. So here we go. So I was talking with the CEO of a global consulting company one day when his phone rang. As he sighed as he reached for the receiver, "Now, what fresh hell is this?" So I think we all know how he felt. It's Friday evening, you've just finished a grueling project and you've been looking forward to a quiet weekend. Then your client calls and wants something by 8 o'clock on Monday morning. So there goes your weekend. You go to bed, badly needing rest for your jam-packed day ahead, but the baby cries all night. So there goes your energy. You need direction from your boss on a project you've never tackled before and are scared of, and she's nowhere to be found. There goes your confidence. You plan to hike to Machu Picchu with your daughter, get all the way to Peru, and on your first evening in Cusco, you break your hip and have to be flown home the next morning in excruciating pain. That actually happened to poor Katie, the one with the daughter getting married. It was her present, and she ended up breaking her hip in Machu Picchu. Am Mensch tracht und Gott lacht. That's the Yiddish saying. Man plans and God laughs. So what do? We just plan better. I gotta get more control over my life. I don't see my friends, I'm not exercising, I can't sleep, I have no leisure, my life's a mess. So it sounds familiar, right? We've all said that at least once in a while. We know we need help, so we go looking. And the authors, the podcasters, the TED Talk pundits are very happy to oblige. Having resorted to them myself, I can tell you that for me, their advice usually comes down to doing the same set of things. Slow down, set some boundaries, eliminate distractions, just say no, do it. So we give it a go. So maybe you're about to try all of this again in this springtime resolution time, Lent. And for the next 40 days, you vow, I'm getting off social media, I'm turning off notifications, I'm blocking my calendar, getting a prayer app, starting a diet, and joining a gym. I am gonna wrestle it all to the ground. I gotta get control. And then, of course, it all goes sideways again. Work kicks into another high gear, something else falls apart at home, you break your streak on the prayer app. I mean, isn't that an awful thing to make you feel bad, these streaks on everything? And you injure yourself in yoga class. So our misery needs soothing. So despite our best intentions, we take one little peek at our phones, we eat just that one pint of ice cream, it was such a terrible day. We skip church this one Sunday, vow to get back to the gym as soon as our injury heals. But we don't. Eventually, we turn the notifications back on, forget the diet altogether, cancel the prayer app and the gym membership, because why pay for things we're not using? And we feel like failures. And of course, now God isn't laughing anymore. He's shaking his head in pity over his poor beloved children. When will you understand? When will you ever learn? But of course, we don't. And instead, I hear it all the time, we look for something to blame. It's the technology. It's the culture. And obviously, there is nothing we can do about those, so we got a good excuse. We might as well try to boil the ocean. Who among us wouldn't be tempted to give up or run away? I'm sure there are days when you have just said, stop the world, I want to get off. Listen to my prayer, oh God. Do not ignore my cry for help. Please listen and answer me, for I am overwhelmed by my troubles. My heart pounds in my chest. Fear and trembling overwhelm me, and I can't stop shaking. Oh, that I had wings like a dove, and I could fly away and rest. I would fly far away to the quiet of the wilderness. How quickly I would escape far from this wild storm. Now that's Psalm 55, written in the late Iron Age, at roughly the same time as the Assyrian Empire. Technology, culture, there aren't people through all the ages have experienced what we're experiencing. Life is life. It's always going to be this way. So there is something we can do, and I suspect you think, knowing how fast your brains are, that I am going to say we should make Christ the center of our lives. And I am. But let me come around to this gradually by starting with something I heard Elon Musk's wife, the first one, I think, say in a TED Talk about 7 years ago. So this is old Elon. She said that her husband was able to accomplish such extraordinary feats of innovation, not because he barricaded himself against the craziness of life, but because he had such a deep, deep drive to make the technologically impossible possible that he just disregarded anything else. He ignored the dissenters, the critics, and rid himself of people who undermined him and work that wasted his time. His priority was crystal clear. She put it this way, she called it his bright yes. and with a firm grip on it, it was easy for him not to get pulled into the chaos and to say no when he needed to. The deeper and brighter your yes, the faster and easier your no. I mean, that makes sense, right? That must be physics or something. Now, Elon Musk is an extreme case. I admit this. He's the richest man in the world. He has a lot of power none of us have, and maybe none of you would want him as a husband or a father. I don't blame you. But let's not dismiss this example, because his real power, the exact same power that was in the reach of each and every one of us, is the ability to focus. Focus is what gives him a peace of mind, so that the chaos that surrounds him, the chaos that surrounds all of us, just doesn't faze him. It doesn't go away. It just doesn't faze him, and it doesn't knock him off course. You might say, in a way, he's a little like Christ, asleep in the boat in that story, the storm everywhere, and the disciples scared to death. So Jesus was always trying to get people to focus. He tried to show Peter once what extraordinary things he'd be capable of if he could just focus. So it's my favorite gospel story, actually. When Peter saw Christ walking on the water on the stormy seas, he asked the Lord to let him walk on the water. Come to me. Let me come to you, Lord. So Jesus said, come on. So full of faith, confidence, and focus, Peter put his foot on the water and walked. Now, the end of that story we know, and that's where the emphasis in sermons always goes. I wish somebody would put the emphasis on the fact he walked. He walked on the water like Christ himself. He forgot about the storm. He focused on Jesus. But then the storm distracted him. He got scared and began to sink. Save me, Lord, save me. And of course, Jesus did. And he shook his head. Oh, ye of little faith. Why did you doubt? Or he might have said, oh, you of such wobbly focus. Why did you lose it? So put it in modern language. Peter, get it through your head. Focus on me, not on the storm. And if there's actually a poster, you can get it on Amazon and Etsy if you want, of Jesus in the storm, sitting with his hand out. Focus on me, not on the storm. You can put it on your wall. So can we make Christ our deep, bright yes and focus on him with uncompromising discipline? I would say yes, we can. We just choose not to. When our yes is strong enough, discipline is not hard. It's easy to say no when you have a deep yes, and the reason I say this is because I watched tons of people do this kind of strong discipline when it comes to food allergies. Right? A child's peanut allergy is so severe that exposure could put him in anaphylactic shock. And so his mother's unbending yes to her precious son's health and life makes her super vigilant about peanuts, and she roots them out everywhere. My niece has a gluten allergy, so serious that cross-contaminated food could put her in the hospital. Her adamant yes to good health has made her no to gluten ruthless. She doesn't miss it. Seeing other people eat it doesn't bother her. She doesn't want it eliminated from the grocery stores. That's because for her, her yes is strong enough, and it's a matter of life and death. So, of course, as you can expect I'm going to say, it's a matter of life and death for us too, that is, eternal life. Living a life of focus isn't a cakewalk. We are going to have wobbly times. We pick ourselves up and try again. But if we can get our yes to Christ stronger, and that's the idea, we can't go from no focus to 100% focus all at once, it will get easier and easier and easier to eliminate the distractions, to cope with the unexpected, and to make decisions about how to go in life faster and easier, and the consequences of those decisions easier to accept. So yeah, For allergic people, it's a matter of physical health. For us, it's a matter of spiritual health. Jesus said, let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no. Anything more comes from the evil one. Well, yeah, sure, the evil one, always on the prowl, seeking the ruin of souls. Because who smiles when we let our focus get weak? We fall apart. We have stomach aches. We have frustration, anxiety, despair, misery. Not God, that's for sure. The one who made us to be fully alive, men and women. So we have to work at making our yes so strong that the daily storm of fresh hell just gradually loses its power to distract and ultimately drown us. So let's ask ourselves, and it's the thing to think about, how strong is our yes to Christ right now? And how firm is it at that point? Does it wobble all over? So Father Joe taught me that our Christian life is marked by milestones. Gradually and by the grace of God, and if we cooperate and make the effort, we will move from Christ is a value in our lives to Christ is an important value in our lives, to Christ is the most important value in our lives, to Christ is the only value in our lives. So that's the idea. So Father Joe asked me, where do you think you are, my dear? And I said, well, number 2, Christ is an important value, and I wobble around, I think. Sometimes it slides back. I try to make it go forward. I slide back. But it's kind of sort of there. And then I told him I didn't see how I could possibly move further along unless I worked for the church or I had chosen to be a nun. And he just snorted at me. And then he told me to go read Introduction to a Devout Life, which was written by St. Francis de Sales in 1609. So I'll just quote a tiny bit from it. True devotion to Christ not only does not injure any sort of calling or occupation, in fact, it embellishes and enhances it. Moreover, just as every gem cast in honey becomes brighter and more sparkling, each according to its color, so each person becomes more acceptable and fitting in his own vocation when he sets his vocation in the context of devotion. Through devotion, your family cares become more peaceful. Mutual love between husband and wife becomes more sincere. The service we owe to our prince, our boss, becomes more faithful. And our work, no matter what it is, becomes more pleasant and agreeable. A saint said so. So to get our focus stronger on Christ, Father Joe told me that step 1 is to learn to see our work, no matter what it is, as a ministry to others, no matter what it is, and in the service of Christ our Lord. If we can do this, it will get stronger, I guarantee it. At the time, I wasn't really sure what he meant or if I could really do it because other people around me weren't doing it, but I watched other people who can. So my friend Ryan is a neurological oncologist. He's a brain cancer doctor. And it is the sad nature of Ryan's work that he almost never gets to deliver good news. Generally, he can't cure anything that his patients present him with. So he does his best to try, and he does his very best to delay the inevitable, but he said that his medical practice, in truth, and because of his devotion, is inspired by something he learned in medical school. A quote from Hippocrates. The physician's true role is to cure sometimes, treat often, and comfort always. So he is a unique doctor in this world and a deeply devout man, and because he sees his work fundamentally as a ministry of comfort to his patients. He gets to know them and their families, finds out how they want to live this season of their lives, gives them respite with laughter and a joke. And if they're open, he prays with them, encouraging them to the very end. So that's Ryan, the physician comforter. Now, I met Phil right here at St. Clement 10 years ago. Phil was a junior partner in a dog-eat-dog public accounting firm. And he was struggling in his work with the way that the firm's success came at the expense of the young staff, and sucked into that dog-eat-dog world and the misery and the gossip and all of the, posturing. He just was not sure he could even stay. Because a devout Christian man isn't either a tyrant or a slave driver. And so he knew that he had to find a different way to exist in the firm if he was going to stay at all. He couldn't just do it for a year, make the money, then leave, protect himself with armor, and then get out. He had to find a different way to exist. So he decided to dedicate himself to shepherding his young staff to excellence. He asked them to talk about their career hopes and their goals, and then he made sure to give them opportunities to work a little above their experience and skill, pulling them up, guiding them only as much as they needed, taking their advice about how to do things better, giving them exposure to important clients and senior partners. Only a year went by before the new hires at the firm were clamoring to work for Phil, and he ended up with the most productive team in his service line. Phil, the servant leader, the good shepherd. And then there's Misty, who is a checkout clerk at the Kroger, where I live in Franklin, Tennessee. "How you doing, Miss Lisa?" she says whenever I put my basket on the belt. "You ready for this snow?" Snow in Tennessee is a awful thing. "You ready for this snow? You got enough food to keep you warm? I don't see any hot chocolate in that basket of yours, but maybe you already got some bourbon whiskey at home." Now, a lot of transplants to Nashville from Illinois and New York and California have never met anyone like Misty. And they avoid her line at the grocery store because it's always the longest one. But when they hear the laughter and they watch it go as fast as anyone else's, they gravitate over. They're curious. "You like this job?" I heard one of them say to her. She said, "What I love is Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. And he put me here. And then he went and put you here. And so now I love you too. Y'all ready for this snow?" So that's Misty, the minister of joy, minimum wage, grocery store clerk. Now, Ryan, Phil, and Misty, they have their bad days too, I'm sure. Sometimes they're overloaded, they're overwhelmed, just like you and I are. So how does a person whose work and relationships, if our relationships and work are built on Christ, how do we handle the problem of too much to do and not enough time to do it? I mean, that's different than things driving us crazy. Literally, we can't do it all. So, we business school professors, we've got a solution for this. We tell the executives we teach to cut their employees' workloads. We tell them to take stuff off their plate because we want them to avoid cognitive overload. Cognitive overload. Fried brain. You can't do anything with a fried brain. But I am not so sure about that. When I was a freshman in college in 1973 and a psych major, the field of psychology was abuzz with the work of two Princeton social psychologists, Daniel Batson and John Darley, who had just published a remarkable piece of research. They were intrigued by a social conundrum. Why is it that people don't stop to help when they see a fellow man in serious trouble? Now, you might have wondered the same thing if you read about the man who set the woman on fire in the New York City subway in January, and people just walked by on the platform, including the police. Why is that? So Darley and Batson designed an experiment. It was called the Good Samaritan experiment. And it was inspired by the behavior of two other people who failed, the priest and the Levite, who walked by a half-dead man at the side of the road. They didn't stop. Why? So they theorized, hypothesized. They said, well, maybe the priest and the Levite were suffering from cognitive overload. They were too busy and preoccupied with important religious business and all the stuff they had to do in the day. They just couldn't stop. Now, as far-fetched as that sounds, maybe the Samaritan who did stop had the one luxury you and I never have: time on his hands. So Darley and Batson decided to put it to the test. They recruited seminarians from the Princeton Divinity School, and they sent them to a classroom where they were instructed to write a short sermon on the parable of the Good Samaritan. And then, when they finished, they were told to go to a nearby building to tape record what they'd written. Some of the students were told, you're late. They were expecting you a few minutes ago. You better get going. The assistant is waiting for you, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Others were told, the assistant is ready for you, so please, go right over. Still others were told, it'll still be a few minutes before they're ready for you, so you might as well head over. You might have to wait, but it won't be long. So when it was each turn, one by one, each seminarian set out. En route to the recording studio, the seminarian encountered an actor who had been hired to lie in the sidewalk, doubled over, eyes closed, coughing and groaning. The experimental question was, would the seminarians stop? Now, sadly, many of them did not. When they had a lot of time, 63% of them offered some kind of help. When they were under a little time pressure, only 45% of them stopped. And if they were in a big hurry, only 10% of them even paused. In fact, a few of those super busy seminarians actually stepped over the apparently injured man to get to the recording studio. Now, so what are we to make of this? Of course, it is tempting to be amused by the irony of these godly young men and women who have just written about the Good Samaritan failing to practice what they preach. But we professors say, see, it's the result of cognitive overload. People so busy they fail to do what's right even when they're about to trip over it. But that may not be the lesson. After all, 10% of those super busy people did stop to help. Why? They were as rushed as everyone else. But perhaps they had a deeper yes to service, and so automatically they deprioritized recording a sermon without thinking about it. And the 37% who had all the time in the world but didn't stop, that's a big number. What about them? Obviously, their deeper yes was about something else entirely. Mother Teresa didn't want her sisters to lose their deep yes to Christ in the midst of their never-ending, overwhelming hospice work. So she and her sisters prayed together for 45 minutes every day for their patients. And one day, one of the sisters asked Mother if she would please shorten their prayer time so they could spend more time with their patients. There just were so many sick and dying people. Mother responded by doubling their prayer time to an hour and a half. Because she knew full well those sisters were at risk of losing their deep risk to Christ in the midst of the chaos, and then the whole enterprise was shot. So Father Joe always said the real skill of a focused person is discernment. But I'll let Pope Francis say it this way. The Christian is a man or a woman who knows how to keep watch over his heart. And many times our heart, with so many things that come and go, seems a local marketplace. Everything you can find there. This is why vigilance is necessary. We need to test things. This is from the Lord and this is not, in order to remain in the Lord. So do I test what I think, what I want, what I desire, or do I accept it all without discernment as it comes crashing at me? Put it to the test. Put it to the test. So that's the 2-step. Focus first, discernment second. But I will not pretend that such vigilance is easy in any given moment. So one day, I was running late, as always, for my exercise class. I parked the car, fed the meter, and started hurrying down Church Street in Evanston to get there. As I rushed along, I saw a man sitting on a bench on the sidewalk. He had his pants leg rolled up, and he was holding paper towels against his leg. The towels were soaked with blood. There was blood splattered all over the sidewalk, too. The odd thing was he made no sound at all. He didn't call out. He didn't seem to be in either distress or pain. So what did I do? I rushed right by him. Now, I didn't get 10 feet before I thought, good God, Lisa, what is the matter with you? So I ran into the exercise studio, told him I was going to be late, grabbed more paper towels and ran back to him. There was blood everywhere, and his legs were covered with sores. I asked him if he wanted me to call an ambulance, and he nodded, so I told him I'd wait until it came. And while I waited, kneeling down beside him, I just thought, what a weak person I am. But I thank God that at least in that situation, I turned around to help a fellow man in distress before it was too late. I don't think I could have forgiven myself otherwise. I just said, all right, Lord, I vow to be faster next time. So the ambulance didn't take long, and as the paramedics organized their supplies, the man asked me my name, and I told him. And then he said, God bless you, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you for helping me. So I still think he was an angel sent to teach me a lesson. Skill at discernment gets us ready for step 3, the really hard part of a yes to Christ, making trade-offs. Now, life is a series of trade-offs every minute of every day. You chose to come here, you traded off something else you could have done. Every minute of every day is exactly like that. Now, the trade-offs we're asked to make, the trade-offs we choose to make, are not always pleasant, and some of them have some serious negative consequences. But a strong focus on Christ makes deciding among them faster, easier, and the consequences, even when they're negative, much easier to accept. So one of my MBA students, his name was Guillermo, was offered a job, a great job, at a management consulting firm. It came with a huge salary, a giant signing bonus, important responsibilities, and the expectation of travel 50% of the time. Now, Guillermo was a new dad, but he and his wife talked it over and agreed their family could cope with 50% travel. The month before he was supposed to start work, Guillermo's hiring manager told him that the client would now require him to travel 70% of the time. But to compensate, there'd be a big salary bump and an even bigger signing bonus. Guillermo didn't hesitate 1 second. He turned the job down. Now, his manager was positively flabbergasted. How could he possibly turn down money like that? And the choice for Guillermo was certainly not management consultant or crew chief at McDonald's, all right? So we're not talking about a trade-off like that. This is, how could he possibly turn something down like that? He could buy his family anything, everything with that kind of money. A house in a really nice neighborhood, the very best schools, vacation, and travel. Guillermo said, my job as a father is to get my son to heaven. And I can't do that if I'm not here. All the money will not buy my son a father. So perhaps you think he was crazy, and he was crazy, just crazy for God. And he was crazy for the wife and son God had entrusted to him to get to heaven. That's his job as a father. Now, Sarah was stuck in a different dilemma. I met her at one of the churches here in Chicago. She loved teaching Sunday school to the third graders at her church, and she took prepping her lessons every week very, very seriously. And she would always dedicate Saturday night to lesson prep and an early night so she could get up in time for 8 o'clock Mass and Sunday school. At the time, Sarah was engaged to a fiancé who admired her for what she did for the children. And he went along with it, in support of it, for a while. And then pressure from his own friends to go out on Saturday nights made him start pressuring Sarah. And he'd say things like, "You're overthinking this. They're just kids. You're doing enough. Come on, let's go out." And Sarah said, "I will go out on Friday. I will go out on Sunday. You can go out on Saturday. But no, I am not going out on Saturday." And so the engaged relationship came to a very abrupt end over Sunday school. Now, again, does that sound idiotic to you? Given how hard it is to find a potential spouse to begin with. But you want that one? Sarah said to me, "Do you think, Lisa, I will ever, ever, ever find a man who loves Christ as much as I do? Who will build his life with me around the Lord?" I said, "Yes, Sarah, you will. You keep your yes bright and strong, he'll find you." And he has. So they go out together on Friday. He goes out with his friends on Saturday, if he wants to. She stays in and does her prep. They go to Mass together on Sunday morning, have a quiet evening together at home before the new work week starts. They're about to have a baby, and one day maybe he'll be a catechist too. And so now I'm going to finish with one more story about a trade-off. And I don't tell it very often for a reason that will shortly be very obvious to you. So you remember I told you that I owe my life at this point to 3 men. Alan, Father Peter, and Brad Bennett, an evangelical Christian, besides Father Joe. So Brad Bennett is the single most inspiring Christian man I have ever met in my life. Light radiates out of this man's face. He and his wife Laura are the parents of 3 children. Their eldest is Katie, 17. Their 11-year-old twin sons are Jack and Luke. Now, the most important non-negotiable in the Bennett family is Christ. Secondly, the next most important non-negotiable in the Bennett family is weekly church attendance as a family. Now, when the children were young, they went to church on Saturday evening. But when Katie was about to be a senior in high school, the whole family agreed that they would switch worship to Sunday morning so that Katie could go to school events and on dates Saturday night. Then, at the beginning of Katie's senior year, the football coach moved the boys' practice from Saturday afternoon to Sunday morning. It was a crisis, and Brad did absolutely everything he could do to change and get out of this problem. He asked the coach if he could please move the practice to Sunday afternoon. He asked if his sons could be switched to a lower level league team that practiced on Saturday morning. He even investigated whether his sons could play football for a different school than the one they attended that didn't practice on Sunday morning. And the answer was no, no, no. So blocked at every single turn, the family sat down together. And Brad said, "Boys, here is the problem. We always go to church together. We agreed to go to church on Sunday this year for Katie. Now your football practice is moved to Sunday. So it's up to you, boys. What do you want to do?" Brad told me he had never been prouder of his 2 young sons than when he watched them take this in, look at each other, tears gathering in their eyes, and heard them say, "Daddy, we go to church." A deep yes in this family to Christ was already taken root in a couple of 11-year-olds. So when I tell this story, you all were very quiet. Usually if I tell this story, I get really hostile questions. Like, why can't Katie go to church by herself on Sunday? Can't she miss a couple of dates for football season? Does the family have to go to church on Sunday morning? Can't they watch it on TV Sunday night? Now, saying no to football was painful for those boys, like turning a job was down for Guillermo and breaking an engagement was for Sarah, but the decision wasn't hard. So I'm distinguishing between hard and painful. It was painful, it wasn't hard. Because their yes was so deep and bright to Christ, it was easy to say no, even though it hurt. So what happened to Brad's boys? They missed 1 season of football as 11-year-olds. When Katie graduated from high school, the family went back to Saturday night church. And when the boys were seniors and wanted to go out on Saturday night themselves, they only played sports that didn't practice on Sunday morning, even though they were always the best athletes on the team. If you want to watch an Olympian do the same thing, I think you should rent Chariots of Fire. Have you ever seen that movie? If you have not, it's about an Olympian who refused to participate on a Sunday. It can be done. It has been done. Not with an 11-year-old, but with an Olympian. So we're all saying yes to something right now, even if we haven't consciously made the decision. So the question is, for all of us, what is it? And if it isn't Christ, that's okay, but let's not fool ourselves that it is when it isn't. And then can we start, wherever we are, to move closer to Him, starting by making our work a ministry to Him. We can all do that. That's easy to do. Making our parenting a service to Him. Making our love of our friends a service to Him. We can do that. And then can we discern as things are coming at us, is this consistent with my yes or is it not? Is it yes or is it not? And so what will happen without you intending it is gradually, Christ will become an increasingly important value in our lives. We will automatically become more discerning and vigilant over our hearts. And decisions, big and small, are going to get easier to make. And we will see how painful trade-offs are worth it. We'll cope better, too, with the fresh hell that just comes at us every single day. But now, Satan can't use it to distract us or take us off course anymore. That's because we're focusing on Christ and ignoring the storm, becoming these fully alive men and women walking on the water with our Lord. God bless you. Thank you all for listening. So you were all very nice and didn't throw arrows. But this one I know is extremely hard because unless you have friends like you, this is going to be massively hard. And thank God for the St. Clement community where you've got lots of encouraging friends along the way. So here now, let's see where we are. Okay, so we've got another half hour again before we convene for our last one. So in this one, I don't know that there is a lot you want to talk about and share particularly. I would suggest to you, if you have a journal with you or the notes you want to take, one good question to ask yourself is, on Father Joe's continuum, a value, an important value, the most important value, the only value, where do you think you are? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just, where do you think you are? And how steady are you there? Do you slide back? Do you push forward? How steady? And then what did I talk about that you think is the hardest challenge? And for you personally, I mean, it could be a lot of things. And, many people will sometimes say, you just don't get my life. Well, no, I don't live your life, but I live a life, and it's the same as yours. So I didn't used to be here. I used to be there. So there is a lot of choice. And if you've heard me talk before, you probably remember the story that I told about taking Father Joe in his declining years. I was a full-time professor at Kellogg, and there was no way I could do both things. Not to the level of quality my students deserved, and not to the level of care that sick elderly man needed. So I decided to quit at Northwestern. I had plenty of money. I mean, I've got more than I can use, and why do I have to have more than 100 people can use? And I decided to quit, and my colleagues, they were very upset. Lisa, you can't do this. You're one of our highest rated professors. You're the only one who teaches all of this, blah, 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 blah. And then he said to me, and I just don't understand how you can find any satisfaction in life doing nothing but caring for that old man. And I felt nothing but pity for him. How sad, how sad. The greatest blessing of my life. I could have walked away from it. For what? So, we've all got those. And they're going to be different at different points of our lives. So we just have to heighten the awareness and think and discern and struggle and try and wobble and start over again. But it's not because life is too busy. It's not because there's social media. It's not because of the culture. You are the culture. And we can do this. Thus endeth the sermon. So, does anybody have a question or anything you want to ask before you have some time to yourself, or if you want to talk to others, you can. Yes?
What did you teach?
I was a professor of marketing. I'm a psychologist, so consumer behavior was mine. Anybody else? Okay, so I'll give you till 3:15, please, and stretch, have something to drink, make some notes, talk to each other. But it is time to reflect and ponder, so please use it, and then we'll go to the last one.